4 Things You Should Never Sacrifice, a profound story of Hiroshi. Once upon a time in the mountains of Kyoto. In a quiet village nestled among the towering green peaks of Kyoto, there lived a revered Buddhist monk named Hiroshi. He was a man of wisdom, known for his compassionate heart and his ability to weave stories that carried the weight of deep spiritual truths. Villagers often sought his guidance, coming to him with their troubles, their joys, and their questions about life's greatest mysteries. One crisp autumn morning, as the first rays of golden sunlight touched the rooftops of the village, a wealthy merchant arrived, creating a stir among the townspeople. He was no ordinary merchant, his name was Daichi, and he was one of the richest men in the region. His caravans, laden with silk, gold, and rare jewels, stretched as far as the eye could see. He wore robes embroidered with golden thread, his fingers adorned with gemstones that caught the light with every movement. His arrival sent a ripple of excitement through the village, for it was rare to witness such opulence in their humble home. Yet, despite his riches, there was something missing in Daichi's eyes, a quiet restlessness. A hunger that even his wealth could not satisfy. A meeting of two worlds. Hiroshi, ever serene, approached the merchant with a gentle bow. "You have traveled far and amassed great wealth." "Daichi," the monk said softly. "Tell me, are you truly at peace?" The merchant chuckled, shaking his head. "Peace," he scoffed. "Peace is for those who have nothing to strive for. A man like me does not seek peace, he seeks power, influence, and success. And with enough gold, I can buy anything I desire." Hiroshi listened, his expression unchanged. After a moment, he spoke again. "Let me tell you a story, Daichi. A story about 2 men, one rich, one poor, and the choices they made. 1. Never sacrifice your integrity." In a distant land, there were 2 men, Takashi and Ryo. Takashi was a humble farmer, known for his honesty. He worked tirelessly in his rice fields, not because he sought riches, but because he found joy in the simple rhythm of life. He treated others with kindness, kept his word, and never compromised his morals for personal gain. Ryo, on the other hand, was a powerful landowner, obsessed with accumulating more wealth. Unlike Takashi, Ryo did not earn his riches with hard work and fairness. He manipulated, deceived, and exploited those beneath him. He saw honesty as a weakness and believed that only the cunning could rise to the top. One year, the land was struck by famine. Crops withered, and people starved. Takashi, despite his own struggles, chose to share what little he had with his neighbors. His barn, once full of rice, emptied quickly, but his heart remained full. He believed that true wealth was not measured in gold, but in the trust and love of those around him. Ryo, however, saw the famine as an opportunity. He hoarded his supplies, selling food at outrageously high prices, forcing families to sell their land, their possessions, and even their dignity just to survive. One evening, an old widow came to Ryo's doorstep, pleading for just a handful of rice for her starving children. Ryo laughed, turning her away without a second thought. But fate has its own way of delivering justice. A great flood swept through the land, destroying everything in its path. Ryo's mansion, his granaries, his treasures, all were washed away. The villagers, remembering his cruelty, turned their backs on him. With nothing left, Ryo found himself utterly alone. Takashi, despite also suffering loss, was surrounded by those he had once helped. The villagers, grateful for his kindness, rebuilt his home, replanting his fields. Though he had little, he had everything that truly mattered. Hiroshi turned to Daichi. "Your wealth is great. But does it come at the cost of your integrity? A man who abandons his principles for profit will one day find himself rich in gold but poor in spirit. And when the storm comes, who will stand beside him?" The merchant fell silent. silent. Never sacrifice compassion, a profound lesson in humanity. The Tale of the Two Brothers, a test of the heart. In a bustling city near the sea, two brothers, Haruto and Renji, grew up under the same roof but with vastly different hearts. Their father, a hard-working merchant, had always taught them the importance of kindness, but as they grew older, they chose different paths. Haruto, the elder, took after their father, believing that wealth was a tool to serve others. He ran the family business with fairness, ensuring that workers were paid well and that the poor never went hungry. Renji, however, had a different view. He saw kindness as weakness. "If you hesitate, people will take advantage of you," he often said. "The world rewards those who are ruthless." And so, as their father aged, Renji took control of the family fortune, driven by greed rather than generosity. A city in ruin, a choice to make. One fateful year, the city was struck by a terrible drought. Rivers dried up, crops withered, and hunger gnawed at the people's spirits. Merchants hoarded food, selling it only to the wealthy at unbearable prices. Starvation spread like wildfire. And soon, the streets were filled with desperate eyes, children crying for food, mothers begging for just a handful of rice. Haruto, deeply pained by their suffering, went to his brother. "Renji, we have enough grain to feed the people for months. We must share it." Renji laughed. "You are a fool, Haruto. This is the perfect opportunity to grow our wealth. People will pay anything when they are starving. Why give when we can sell at 10 times the price?" Haruto clenched his fists. He could not believe how far his brother had fallen. "You would watch people die, just to fill your coffers? Survival is a game, Haruto. Only the strongest win." The mother and her child, a moment of truth. That evening, as Haruto wandered through the city, he saw a young mother holding a child in her arms. The little boy's ribs pressed against his skin, his lips cracked from thirst. The mother knelt before Renji's warehouse, her hands trembling as she held out her last silver coin. "Please," she whispered, "just enough food for my son to live another day." Renji looked at the coin, then at the woman. He shook his head. "That is not enough." Tears streamed down her face. "I will work for you, do anything. Please, I beg you, he is all I have." Renji's voice remained cold. "Come back when you can pay." Haruto had seen enough. He stepped forward, placing his own bag of coins in the woman's hands. "Take what you need," he said. "Feed your son. No mother should have to beg for her child's life." Renji watched in disbelief as Haruto continued giving away food freely. One bag after another, until the warehouse, once overflowing, stood nearly empty. "You're ruining us," Renji shouted. "You're throwing away everything we've built." Haruto turned to his brother. His eyes calm but resolute. "Wealth means nothing if it is not used to ease suffering." The storm that changed everything. Weeks passed, and the famine continued. But because of Haruto's generosity, the people survived. They never forgot his kindness. Then, on a dark night, a storm rolled in from the sea. The wind howled, the rain poured, and in the dead of night, Renji's warehouses collapsed. His remaining grain spoiled, his fortune washed away in the flood. For the first time in his life, Renji had nothing. Cold, drenched, and alone, he stumbled through the city, seeking shelter. But the doors that once welcomed him were now closed. He had turned his back on the people, and now they turned their backs on him. With nowhere else to go, he found himself at Haruto's door. His brother, despite everything, opened his home without hesitation. "Why would you help me?" Renji asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After everything I did?" Haruto smiled softly. "Because compassion is never something to be sacrificed, no matter how much the world tells you otherwise." Renji fell to his knees, tears mixing with the rain. He had spent his life believing that kindness was weakness. But in that moment, he realized it was the greatest strength of all. The true power of compassion. Hiroshi finished his story, watching as Daichi, the wealthy merchant, sat in silence, lost in thought. "Tell me, Daichi," Hiroshi finally spoke, "has your wealth made you stronger? Or has it simply built walls around you?" The merchant swallowed hard. "I have spent my life fearing that if I give too much, I will lose everything," he admitted. Hiroshi nodded. "And yet, those who hoard wealth often find themselves alone, while those who give freely are never truly poor." Daichi looked around at the village, simple people. Yet they seemed richer in spirit than he had ever felt in his entire life. For the first time, he saw his wealth not as a shield, but as a tool, to build, to nurture, to bring light to those in darkness. He bowed deeply before Hiroshi. "Thank you, Master. I understand now." From that day on, Daichi used his fortune not to control, but to uplift. He built wells for those without water, schools for those without knowledge, and homes for those without shelter. And though he remained wealthy, his heart, at last, was at peace. Final reflection: why compassion should never be sacrificed. In a world driven by competition, we are often told that kindness is a weakness. That to succeed, we must think only of ourselves. But the truth is, wealth, power, and status are fleeting. The only thing that truly remains is how we treat others. If you sacrifice compassion, you may gain riches, but you will lose your humanity. If you hold on to compassion, you may not have much, but you will always have a place in the hearts of others. So ask yourself, when the storm comes, will there be hands to lift you up? Or will you stand alone? The choice is yours. Never sacrifice relationships, a tale of love, loss, and redemption. The rise of Kaito, a man who had everything but love. In the grand city of Edo, where merchants and aristocrats walked the bustling streets, there was a man named Kaito. He was the son of a simple craftsman but had grown to become one of the wealthiest men in the land. His business empire stretched across the city. He owned ships that sailed across distant seas, markets that bustled with trade, and estates filled with treasures that most could only dream of. From the outside, Kaito was a man who had everything. But there was one thing he lacked: he had no one to share his fortune with. Kaito had once been a man of warmth and kindness, deeply in love with Aiko, the woman who had been by his side since his youth. They had dreamed of building a future together. But as Kaito's ambitions grew, so did his distance from the people he once held dear. "Aiko, I will return soon," he had promised her, "just a few more months and we will have enough wealth to live in luxury." But months turned into years. His love letters became less frequent. His visits home became shorter. And one day, Aiko stopped waiting. She left the city, heartbroken, realizing that Kaito had already made his choice. But Kaito didn't notice. He was too busy chasing the next deal, the next fortune. Love can wait, he told himself. Relationships can be mended. But wealth must be earned before it is too late. He had friends once too, men who had worked beside him, laughed with him over sake, and celebrated his successes. But as Kaito's empire grew, so did his arrogance. He saw relationships as distractions. "I have no time for idle talk," he would say. "Business must always come first." And so, one by one, his friends drifted away. A man alone, the cost of betraying those who care. Years passed, and Kaito's riches grew beyond imagination. But something strange began to happen. When he hosted grand feasts in his golden palace, the laughter that once filled the halls was gone. The men who sat at his table were not friends, they were business partners, competitors, men who feigned loyalty but would turn against him the moment it suited them. One evening, As he stood on the balcony of his towering estate, looking down at the flickering lanterns of the city below, a realization struck him. He had no one to call his own. No wife. No children. No true friends. His wealth had bought him power, but it had not bought him love. And for the first time in decades, Kaito felt poor. The illusion of power, a dangerous betrayal. Kaito's loneliness soon gave way to paranoia. His business rivals, sensing his vulnerability, plotted against him. One night, as he sat in his private chambers, he received a letter, one that sent a chill down his spine. Your fortune is built on sand. The tides are coming. It was unsigned. But Kaito knew what it meant. His empire, once untouchable, was falling apart. His so-called allies had turned against him, scheming to seize his assets and strip him of everything. Panicked, Kaito sent word to his old friends, the ones he had pushed away. He begged them for help. But no one came. His former companions, the men who had once trusted him, had long since moved on. You abandoned us, Kaito, one of them finally replied. Now, we do the same to you. Kaito, once the most powerful man in Edo, was now utterly alone. And as the days passed, his enemies closed in. His ships were taken. His wealth was stolen. His home was seized. And in the end, all that remained was a single empty room, where once a mighty empire had stood. The final lesson: love cannot be bought. One cold evening, as he wandered the streets in rags, Kaito found himself in a quiet village at the edge of the sea. There, beneath the cherry blossoms, he saw a familiar face. It was Aiko. She was older now, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes still held the warmth he had once loved. She was sitting with her husband, a simple fisherman, laughing as their grandchildren played at their feet. Kaito stood in the shadows, watching, as a single tear slid down his cheek. That could have been my life, he whispered. For the first time, he understood. Wealth can be regained. Power can be rebuilt. But some things, once lost, are lost forever. That night, Kaito returned to the city and gave away what little he had left. He no longer sought riches. Instead, he sought to rebuild what truly mattered: relationships. He started small, helping the poor, guiding lost souls, giving to those in need. And though he never regained his fortune, he found something greater: friendship, belonging, peace. Hiroshi's words to the merchant. Hiroshi finished his story, his voice soft yet powerful. Daichi, the wealthy merchant, sat frozen in thought. Kaito had everything, Daichi finally whispered, but in the end, he had nothing. Hiroshi nodded. Tell me, Daichi, when your wealth is gone, who will stand beside you? The merchant swallowed hard. I don't know. Hiroshi smiled gently. Then perhaps it is time to find out. That night, Daichi wrote letters to his estranged family. He sought out the friends he had neglected, the people he had once cared for but forgotten in his pursuit of riches. And slowly, piece by piece, he rebuilt the bridges he had burned. For the first time in years, he felt something more valuable than gold. He felt connected. He felt human. Final reflection: why relationships should never be sacrificed. In a world obsessed with success, it is easy to believe that money and status are the ultimate goals. But in the end, what is wealth if you have no one to share it with? If you sacrifice relationships for ambition, you may climb higher, but you will stand alone at the top. So ask yourself, who do you have in your life right now? Are you nurturing those relationships, or are you pushing them aside? When the storms of life come, will you have hands to hold, or will you face the darkness alone? Choose wisely. Because once love is lost, not even a fortune can bring it back. Never sacrifice inner peace, the story of Ryanosuk's endless pursuit. The man who had everything but peace. In the heart of Kyoto, where cherry blossoms danced in the wind and the rivers whispered secrets of the past, there lived a man named Ryanosuk. He was a scholar, a philosopher, a man of boundless ambition. From the time he was a boy, he had been taught that greatness was measured by achievements, that only those who conquered the world could truly be called successful. And so, Ryanosuk vowed to be the greatest. He mastered every subject, studied under the finest teachers, and soon became the most revered thinker in all of Japan. He wrote books that were read in distant lands, debated with the wisest monks, and was praised by the emperor himself. People bowed before him. His name was spoken with reverence. But in the silence of the night, when no one was watching, Ryanosuk felt nothing but emptiness. Why do I feel this way? He often asked himself. He had wealth. He had power. He had knowledge. And yet, peace eluded him. The relentless chase for more. Despite his accomplishments, Ryanosuk was never satisfied. I must achieve more, he told himself. He sought new challenges, new victories. He climbed higher and higher, convinced that at the peak of success, he would finally find the peace he longed for. He built schools. He wrote more books. He earned more respect. But still, the void remained. One evening, as he sat in his grand library, surrounded by countless scrolls of wisdom, he felt something strange, a restlessness he could not explain. Perhaps I have not done enough, he thought. So he pushed himself harder. He traveled to foreign lands, debating with scholars, seeking someone who could give him the answer he had spent his life chasing. But no matter where he went, no matter what he learned, the answer never came. And the harder he chased fulfillment, the further it seemed to slip away. The encounter with the monk. One day, Ryanosuk heard whispers of a monk who lived in the mountains. A man said to possess wisdom greater than all the scholars in the land. Desperate for answers, he embarked on a journey, climbing steep cliffs and crossing raging rivers, until he finally reached the small temple where the monk lived. The monk, an old man with eyes like still water, greeted him with a gentle smile. "What brings you here, traveler?" he asked. Ryanosuk bowed deeply. "Master, I have spent my life in pursuit of knowledge, power, and success. I have everything a man could desire. And yet, I feel nothing but emptiness." "Why?" The monk chuckled softly. "Let me tell you a story. The Emperor and the Beggar." Once, there was a great emperor who had conquered vast lands, built golden palaces, and ruled with absolute power. Yet, despite his triumphs, he was plagued by an unshakable feeling of unease. No matter how many victories he won, no matter how much wealth he amassed, he could not find peace. One day, he heard of a beggar who lived by the river, a man said to be the happiest soul in the land. Curious, the emperor disguised himself and went to visit the beggar. He found him sitting beneath a tree, singing to himself, his clothes tattered but his face glowing with contentment. The emperor frowned. "How can you be so happy?" he demanded. "You have nothing. No power, no riches, no servants. How can a man like you know peace, while I, the ruler of all, know nothing but restlessness?" The beggar smiled. "Tell me, your majesty, when you sleep at night, do you dream of war? Do you wake with worries of betrayal? Do you fear losing what you have?" The emperor hesitated. "Yes, all the time." The beggar nodded. "And yet, I sleep peacefully every night, for I have nothing to lose. I do not chase the wind, nor do I grasp at shadows. I have only this moment, and in this moment, I am free." The emperor sat in stunned silence. He had spent his life chasing the illusion of fulfillment, while the beggar, who had nothing, had found the peace he had always longed for. The monk's lesson. As the monk finished his story, Ryanosuk remained silent, his mind spinning. The monk studied him carefully before speaking again. You have spent your life climbing mountains, searching for answers. But tell me, Ryanosuk, have you ever stopped to enjoy the view? The scholar's eyes widened. What do you mean? The monk chuckled. You believe peace is something to be achieved. But peace is not a destination. It is not waiting for you at the peak of success. It has been with you all along, waiting for you to notice it. Ryanosuk sat there, stunned. For the first time in his life, he understood. The return home, a new beginning. Ryanosuk returned to Kyoto, but he was no longer the same man. He stopped chasing recognition. He no longer wrote books to impress others. He no longer sought debates to prove his superiority. Instead, he spent his days in quiet reflection, teaching students not just knowledge, but wisdom. One day, a young disciple approached him. Master, how do I find inner peace? Ryanosuk smiled, his heart lighter than it had ever been. Stop searching. It is already within you. Let go of the need to be more, to prove yourself, to chase things that can never satisfy you. The moment you stop running, peace will find you. And for the first time in his life, Ryanosuk no longer needed anything more. Because he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Hiroshi's final words to Daichi. The wealthy merchant, Daichi, sat motionless, his mind replaying every word of the story. So you are telling me, that no matter how much I achieve, it will never be enough, he whispered. Hiroshi nodded. Peace is not found in wealth, nor power, nor knowledge. It is found in stillness, in gratitude, in embracing what is already here. Daichi exhaled deeply. For the first time in his life, he felt relieved, as if the weight of endless ambition had been lifted from his shoulders. I understand now, he said. From that day on, Daichi changed. He still worked hard. But he no longer lived for the chase. He learned to enjoy the quiet moments, the sound of the wind through the trees, the warmth of a shared meal, the laughter of a child. And in those moments, he found what he had spent his whole life searching for. Peace. Final reflection, why you should never sacrifice inner peace. We live in a world that tells us we must always do more. Be more, achieve more. But what if the greatest achievement is simply learning to be content? If you sacrifice inner peace, you may gain wealth, power, and fame, but you will never feel satisfied. If you hold on to inner peace, you may have less, but you will always have enough. So ask yourself, are you chasing peace like it's a prize to be won? Or are you willing to stop running and let peace find you? Because in the end, the greatest treasure is not out there, it is within. It is within. Final summary, the 4 things you should never sacrifice. As the sun sets over the horizon, casting golden hues across the village, Hiroshi stands before the gathered crowd. His voice is calm, yet carries the weight of timeless wisdom. My friends, we have journeyed through stories of wealth and power, love and loss, ambition and regret. But at the heart of these tales lies a single truth: there are 4 things that must never be sacrificed, no matter how great the temptation. 1. Never sacrifice your integrity. Integrity is the foundation of who you are. Once lost, it is nearly impossible to reclaim. Wealth, success, and power may fade, but your character, your truth, will define how you are remembered. Choose honesty over deceit, kindness over greed, and righteousness over convenience. For in the end, a man who betrays his values gains the world but loses his soul. 2. Never sacrifice compassion. The world will tell you that kindness is weakness, that to get ahead, you must put yourself first. But those who hoard wealth, those who turn their backs on others, will find themselves alone when hardship comes. True strength is not in what you keep for yourself, but in what you give to others. When you show compassion, you do not lose, you multiply. Love, generosity, and empathy are the greatest riches a person can possess. 3. Never sacrifice relationships. What is success if you have no one to share it with? What is victory if you stand alone? Do not trade your loved ones for ambition. For when the storm comes, it is not wealth that will shelter you, it is the hands of those who truly care. Cherish your family. Honor your friendships. No empire, no fortune. No achievement is worth the price of loneliness. 4. Never sacrifice inner peace. We spend our lives chasing things, titles, recognition, material possessions, believing they will bring us fulfillment. But the harder we chase, the further peace drifts away. True contentment is not found in the future, nor in the applause of others. It is found in the present, in gratitude, in embracing simplicity. Do not let the world convince you that you must always strive for more. Sometimes, the greatest achievement is simply learning to be at peace with what you have. Hiroshi looks around at the silent faces before him. He smiles. So, I ask you, when the time comes to choose, will you trade these treasures for the fleeting promises of the world? Or will you hold on to them, knowing that in doing so, you will have lived a life of true wealth, true love, and true fulfillment? He bows his head, and the wind carries his words into the night. And somewhere, deep in the hearts of those who listen, a seed is planted, a seed of wisdom that will grow for generations to come. If this story has touched you, if it has made you reflect on what truly matters in life, take a moment to share it. Let this message reach those who need to hear it. And if you wish to walk this path of wisdom together, subscribe for more stories that awaken the soul. Until next time, may you walk in peace, with integrity, compassion, love, and serenity in your heart. Like, share, subscribe for more timeless wisdom.